In Chapter P, and specifically in P1, you are going to be running into a number of things that you've seen before, including what you notice here with inequalities and their graphs. This is something that you've probably worked with in the past in your Algebra 2 class, so you know how to graph things like this. For example, we've got less than or equal to, x is in the middle. We know that when it doesn't have the equal to bar, we're going to go to that -2 and we're going to put an open dot on that point. And then over at the 3, since it does have an equal to bar, that is a closed-in dot. So once you get those, we can graph them, and we have the graph of our inequality that you see right here. And then these other ones are going to be very similar. So I've got x greater than 4 going over here, x less than or equal to 1, so that's a filled in dot, and that is going to the left. And then we've got a compound inequality for this last one. X is less than -3, so that's open dot, shaded to the outside, and greater than, or it's greater than 2, so open dot and shaded to the right there. So what we're looking at, though, is what's something that is not going to be really familiar to us, is this new thing that we're going to have called interval notation. And this is something that is really important throughout the rest of the year. We're going to be using interval notation for so many things. So here's what I want you to know about interval notation, is that when you have an open dot, that's going to be either indicated by a rounded bracket or a parenthesis, either that way or the other way. This one, the closed-in dots, they're going to be represented by square brackets. So one thing that you're going to see in the book is that they'll make a graph and they'll actually replace an open dot with a rounded bracket, and they'll replace a closed dot with a square bracket, and you can do either one. The graph to me doesn't make a whole lot of difference. The thing that makes a difference to me is the interval notation. So here's how it works. We have 2 is less than x is less than 3. For interval notation, what we're going to do is, since this one has no bar on that side, we're first of all just going to take these numbers, the 2 and the 3, and we're going to separate them with a comma. That means that there is a bunch of stuff in between those, but then to say what's in between them, we're going to close it off with these either parentheses or brackets, and in this case the open dot is a parenthesis and square bracket for the closed dot. Now we can do a similar thing here. It's just that this is going to be only a one-sided interval notation. It's going to have something else that goes over to the right. Now when it does go over to the right, goes forever, we're actually going to use infinity. So in this case, we're going to start with 4, since 4 is the leftmost number. We're going to have 4 on the left side. Interval notation always goes left to right. And then we're going to go up to positive infinity. So we're just going to use that symbol right there. Now whenever you have an infinity, that's always going to involve a rounded bracket. So whenever you see that rounded bracket, but here, since we have an open dot, we're going to use a rounded bracket on that side as well. This one's going to be a little bit similar, but remember, we're always working left to right. And so for this one, since we're talking about the negative stuff, we're actually going to start at negative infinity. And as always with infinities, it's a rounded bracket, but then we're going to go up to +1. Since that has a closed dot, it's got the equal to bar, we're going to have a square bracket on that. Now the last one is a little tricky in that you notice it's compound. We've got 2 different things, and so I've graphed it first. I would definitely recommend that you do the left one first, because we're always working left to right with interval notation. So if we were to describe this one here, this part would be negative infinity to -3, open circle, so rounded bracket. Over here, this one starts at 2 and then goes up to positive infinity, rounded bracket on both of those. Now, you don't have to do this necessarily, but when you connect those two things together into one statement, we call it a compound statement, and you can put this big U, which is a union symbol. So this right here has the interval notation with those two separate statements. Now, bounded or unbounded is the other question they're going to ask you in this case. Basically, here's what happens. If it's bounded, then we're talking that all the information is in one nice little chunk. There's nothing going outside of that. So this first one here, this one is bounded because it doesn't go to infinity. Anything that goes to infinity, which are all these other three, those are all going to be unbounded. So number one is bounded. And then all the other three are going to be unbounded.